Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Husqvarna Viking, keeping the world sewing for over 140 years. Hi, and welcome to Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community. I'm Mary Kate Carpetras, and I'm back again with my coworker Gigi Khalsa. Hi, Gigi.
Hi.
And we are here today to talk about this spectacular quilt on the design wall behind us, which is Impulse. And Gigi was afforded kind of an honor.
It's a huge honor.
But it works for us as well because we put this on the cover of our April-May issue, 2015 issue, because it's gorgeous. And we want to talk about what made this, in our minds, a great cover quilt candidate. So first of all, congratulations, Gigi.
Thank you very much. I still have to pinch myself.
Let's talk about this quilt. Let's talk about the fabric, first of all. How did you get the fabric? And
the fabric came from one of our fabric grabs, where we get rid of excess fabric that we don't give away. And I got 2 charm packs, which are these little 5-inch squares, 5-inch cut, 4.5-inch finished, and I had 2 roll-ups, which are these strips.
From Robert Kaufman
all
Fabrics,
from Robert Kaufman,
and they're coordinating tone on tones and solids.
They all matched beautifully. Yep.
Kona solids.
And so I took those home, and I was like, well, hey, what do I do with these? So the first thing I did was I didn't want to do too much cutting because the beauty of pre-cuts is that they're cut for you.
Right.
You don't have to do that. So I just used the charm squares the way that they are, and I wanted to figure out how to mix them with the roll-up strips to come up with an interesting composition.
And so did you lay out the strips whole, because they come with the fabric, so about 42 inches long. Did you lay them out on your design, and you work with a design wall?
With this, definitely. I did this pretty much exclusively on the design wall. And I did start out, I pinned them sort of in half, so I didn't have, really unwieldy strips, and just sort of figured out where I might like each color to go. And ultimately, it just sort of, everything kind of fell into place, and I kind of got ideas as I kept going on my design wall. And
how long did you play before you kind of hit upon, yes, this is the direction in which I want to continue?
I'm not sure about how long. I would say, a good couple hours deciding.
It's not that long.
No, it's not that long, but you
have a very well-developed sense of color and a well-developed aesthetic sense, whereas some of us, and in fact, there are other people we've talked to who maybe will put stuff up on their design wall and then, go to bed.
Right,
and come
let
back
it
the
sit
next
for
day.
a while. Well, I had sketched out my design with, these sort of charm square anchors and the strips coming off of them. So I had an idea of that's the design I wanted to do. But as far as color placement, it really wasn't that difficult. First of all, because there weren't that many bright colors in the rolled-up packets.
Okay.
So I had, orange, and I had a couple yellows.
So some of your choices were already made for you.
Yeah. So rather than try and cut those up to disperse throughout the quilt, I said, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and throw that right in the center, and we'll start big. And then everything sort of built off of that. And as I was going, I kind of enjoyed the idea of having, even though it's an abstract design, I wanted to sort of imply layers or, depth. So I think having this big cross in the front and then having these sort of cooler colors in the back, even though the line is broken up by the yellow, they still recede and go into the background because warm colors tend to jump out at you and cool colors tend to sort of fall to the background, and that's just a general art rule.
And it's also a great lesson in how color is relative to each other and value is relative, because in some settings green could read as warm because it is a mix of a warm color and a cool color. So, but in this application, it reads as cool.
And it's placing it next to the complements, this sort of really orangey rust color. It really makes each color vibrate even more. And the colors are really sort of subdued and a little bit dark, especially as you get up towards the the edges, but I wanted to get maximum impact for the colors. So placing them next to the complement really makes each color sing.
Okay. But sometimes you're placing similar or analogous colors, I guess that's the correct term, close to one another. So, for instance, we have this section here where we've got greens, these little strip piece sets.
And these are interesting because this was from a project I had made years ago. It was just a simple rail fence quilt. And I had, done my strip piecing, cut my strips and made the blocks, made the quilt. It was done. But I had 1-inch strips left over. I couldn't bring myself to throw them away.
Right.
And then when I was designing this quilt, I sort of had this flash of like, well, I have 1-inch strips somewhere. Maybe that would work. And I mean, the colors, it looks like I planned it, but I didn't.
That's amazing.
It's so I had the strip piece sections. Since they're so bright and kind of eye-catching, I thought placing them with the complement would be a little bit too much and maybe sort of jarring. And I wanted to kind of make them look like, how the neon lights sort of go in and you can make them look like they're moving?
Yes.
I wanted that effect.
Okay.
And that's sort of why I placed them in between strips of analogous colors.
What's interesting then is these came from a different manufacturer.
Yeah.
So they're different shades, different tints, different tones of the same color family, and it gives it just that little vibration.
Yes.
Just a little dissonance.
Right.
To create that interest so that not everything blends in. So placing a yellow that doesn't exactly match the yellow it's next to.
It can be a bonus. It can be
Absolutely.
It can be beneficial, and you wouldn't want to do a whole bunch of this non-matching yellow or say this hot pink right there. I wouldn't want to do big squares of it, but having these tiny little patches of it really sort of gives it a little presence, I guess. And
it does, yeah. And you can see that in each round, if you will, because then we have the center medallion, and then we have rounds of borders that are constructed, and you see that in each round.
Yes. Yeah, and it's sort of like as we get out to the center, you can see that, on this side and this side, they're different, but it doesn't jump out at you just because those pieces are so small. And I just used what I had.
I know, and I think that's what's great is that you were, you decided to allow yourself to be limited by what you had on hand, which is a great tradition in quilting.
That's I think one of the things that can sort of jumpstart your creativity is if you give yourself parameters, you can go do anything within those parameters, but I think giving yourself a limit sort of helps you think of more ways to work within that, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Well, the blank page can be so daunting.
Exactly.
And, an open fabric shop can be equally daunting when you have too much choice. So if you just decide to work with what you have.
Yeah, narrow down your choices a little bit, but then go crazy within that, and you can really come up with some cool stuff.
I just wanted to point out one place where because you brought this in as an unfinished top initially, and we hung it up and we all oohed and awed, and then you finished it and we said, we want this quilt. Because we don't always pattern our cover quilts. No. Very often they're not patternable, or
that's true,
nobody would want to try to write the pattern or indeed follow the pattern. But this is one of the quilts that we have been able to pattern, and it's in the issue as well.
That's right.
But some of the things, some of these color things are harder to describe in the confines of the parameters of how we write our patterns. And I wanted to bring attention, for instance, to this kind of like this maroon portion that we see up here, for instance, where you've got that very, I don't know, it's almost Marsala at this point, which is the Pantone 2015 color of the year, but it's a very earthy. How would you describe it? An earthy red is how they're describing it. Yeah. And then you have these bright pops of purple next to them. And that's what I think of as like the Gigi's fearless use of color. Because I would, other quilters might look at that and think, oh, I can't, those colors don't go.
Right, and they don't, they don't go.
Right.
But the thing is, I obviously paid a lot of attention to color theory and, principles of design when I was making this quilt. But there comes a point where you have to be like, okay, so I know what I know and I've used it. but what else, what makes me happy? Would the purple make me happy? Let's do it. And you kind of, like they always say in art school, is you have to know the rules in order to break the rules.
Yes.
And that's sort of what I did. And the purple doesn't go. Most people wouldn't put it in there, but I think the tiny amounts really add a lot.
It makes it really sing. And it gives so much visual interest. It really, as we say, it keeps the eye moving. We keep looking around, and then the outer borders are behind us both, but I'm looking at the blue border around with that bright yellow popping out. So then we do have complementary colors. They're sort of opposite each other on the color wheel, orange and blue. That really just pops, and then we have much more muted borders, and then it just goes around the corners with this. Now this particular print, this came from your stash, right?
Yes, I bought this, I believe, in high school. I've had it for a really long time. I just thought the little sunset print was really cool. I wasn't quilting then, I just thought it was neat. So I've had it forever, and I used up the last of it on this quilt.
Well, it's a fantastic application, and obviously a showstopper.
Thank
quilt.
you very
much. It was a great reason to hold on to that print for so long, to find the right quilt to put it into. So thank you so much for making this quilt and letting us pattern it and bringing it to people. I think they'll find a lot in here that it will be useful for them.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Husqvarna Viking, keeping the world sewing for over 140 years.